to me, it's you can make any job interesting for yourself. And I think that's something that I've learned, in my recent years, let's say, or my long years of different careers. But, it's really important to highlight that, because I've had other jobs that are, I started taking up different responsibilities because I was bored, and I was like, well, how can I learn? So maybe I can be part of this group, or maybe let me take care of this side of it. And I think that's something maybe important to sort of get across to young people, that, if your job does get boring, have a look first if you can make it better. Talk to people in the organization, see if you can learn from them in different areas,
G'day guys, coming up on the show today is Barbara Sikorski, otherwise known as Basha. Basha is the global head of media operations at SailGP and far from a stranger to international events. Previously, she has worked at the likes of the 2016 Rio Olympics, the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, Tokyo 2020, and the International Paralympic Committee, just to name a few. She's now on the Epic team at SailGP, where she manages everything to do with media and operations for the global event. There's lots to look out for, including what it's like to work at such major events, the ins and outs of traveling so much for work, and the skills needed to work in a role like hers. And if you like this episode, you can come along and meet Basha at our Sydney meetup on Thursday, February 15, where she'll be a guest speaker. Very, very exciting. Let's go.
I started volunteering.
It's all about who you know in sport.
Am I going to be calling the last 10 seconds of the grand final?
You can connect with the interviewer. The hand goes up when they've got to make a decision.
Having a network is one of the most important things you can do.
I didn't necessarily follow my passion. I followed my curiosity.
Once you've worked in sport, there's no going back.
And then lo and behold, before I left, I got offered 2.
Hello and welcome to the SportsGrad podcast, the ultimate guide to make it in the sports industry. We are on fire, as you may have noticed. I'm Ryan Walker. Joining me is the yachtsman, Reuben Williams, and we are two mates who met at Cricket Australia. And each week, we learn how people made it in the sports industry. We tease out their career decisions, their work habits, skills, and everything they do that makes them great, also that you can learn how to get in, get promoted, and get thriving in the sports industry. Wow, what an intro.
Ryan, I'm almost crying at the word yachtsman. I think every single week you're like, oh gosh, I need to think of a word for Reuben. We've doubled up, we've tripled up on all the different adjectives in the dictionary, and then you pull out yachtsman.
Well, we also say is that an adjective?
I don't know.
I don't think it is.
I think it's a noun.
Yeah, I'm not very good in that area, to be honest. What is a noun? But anyway, the yachtsman. I thought, I remember back in the day, I used to pick the word directly on theme with what we're talking about. And I reckon I shifted away from that a little bit. So now I'm getting back on the straight course. And if we're talking sailing, yachtsman.
Well,
works.
I did board a yacht over the summer. That was quite nice.
Well, I did think of that as well. There's been a bit of yacht content from over the table. So, I thought it suits.
I like it.
You could be a yachtsman.
Oh, yeah, why not? Maybe we'll give it a go. We're heading up to Sydney for the SailGP in a couple of weeks. So maybe they'll let us onto a boat for
we need
a
to get
bit.
you on a boat, yeah.
Yeah, maybe they'll identify a yachtsman when they see one.
Oh, they'll see it, mate. They'll see it.
Yeah.
Hey, what's been happening?
Mate, things are very normal. Things are very back to normal. I think last time we did a SailGP episode, I was over in Saint-Tropez in southern France, a beautiful part of the world.
Yes.
And had an amazing weekend over there watching the yachts, and then had quite the adventure coming home where I ended up with only €10 in cash to get myself from Saint-Tropez to Marseille airport. If anyone wants to find out what happened, you can go back and listen to that episode. But in comparison to the last time we talked about SailGP, things are very normal.
Yeah.
I've gone back to playing cricket. I've only been able to fit in 2 one-day matches this season. That's kind of the extent of my cricketing commitment at the moment. First game, not too bad. First game back in a long time into the ones. 26 not out. And I'll take that. Not
100%
dismissed.
you take that.
Absolutely. But then this week, I got a bit carried away. I thought, I've still got it. 26, no one's dismissed me yet. I could have gone on with it.
Yeah.
And I made a duck. And I realised actually there's probably a reason why I haven't stepped back onto a cricket field in a while. So
I've been
humbled.
Yeah, you've been humbled. Did I hear that you were chirping a little bit and that kind of may have resulted in the duck?
Well,
Maybe you can shed some light on that.
it may be no surprise to anybody that I do love to talk a lot, and that does not change when I step into a cricket field. And so I do my part to try and, add pressure to the batsmen. We're trying to get you out here. So
Tell them what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just remind them of the game situation and, you know, the shots they're playing and whatnot. And if it helps their dismissal, then so be it. But that doesn't necessarily mean I can back it up with a bat at all. So that's the hard part about playing cricket.
No, fair enough. Well, sometimes you get humbled in the game of cricket, which I've found over many years. So it happens.
It happens.
It happens. Hey, let's get cracking on the app. For those listening, if you don't already, follow us on LinkedIn. That's where you can keep up with us and hundreds of other people working in the sports industry. And we've also got one of our member intakes coming up, Rube. So head to our website and join our waitlist, which is happening next week. Wow.
Yes.
That's come quick.
I know.
So speaking of the community, what is happening?
That's it. Well, last time we opened doors, I think it was like the very end of November, like the 30th of November.
Yeah.
This next one's now happening on the 20th of Feb to the 21st of Feb. So you got 2 days to jump in when we open it up. And it won't be another 3 months until we open it again. So get in or miss out. But there's a lot going on in the community at the moment. And as always, we love to shout out our members. So here's a few people who are, flying at the moment. First one to call out, Ari Davis, volunteer team manager at Western United Football Club, which is an amazing stepping stone. I reckon I talk to so many people who say, I want to be a team manager.
Yeah.
Not many people get to just brush the surface of it and get a taste for it. So well done to you, Ari. Ethan Wren, he's gone back over to Perth, was working at the mighty Collingwood Magpies. He's stepped into the Fremantle Dockers as a membership services officer. So well done to you, Ethan, making the shift back west but staying in the AFL. And then we got Ishan Dushmak, who is a volunteer race official for the Oz Grand Prix Corporation, which is coming up.
Very cool.
Very, very cool. One of the best events in Australia. And Tanishka Singh, matchday coordinator at Melbourne Victory. So bit of football action, bit of world game action in the community this week.
I love how Ethan Wren is trying to bring a premiership to the Dockers. He's got his flag with the Magpies and now he's heading west. So good on you, Ethan. He's actually a premiership winning membership services officer at Collingwood. So good on you, Ethan.
And he's got the tattoo to go with it.
He does. He premiership tat. I love that.
Absolutely. You got to do those things.
Yeah.
In terms of events coming up, plenty coming up. Last week we had a Q&A with Vinnie Gorham, who is another SailGP superstar, and Dickie Curra, who ran a public speaking masterclass as well. So there's always something going on in the SportsGrad community. Coming up, we've got speed networking. We've also got a sports law masterclass. We've also got a leadership masterclass happening. We've just had the Melbourne meetup last Friday, and we've got Perth happening tomorrow, Adelaide happening tomorrow, Sydney happening on Thursday, which is where you're going to be able to meet the magnificent Basha. So if you enjoy this episode, make sure you get along to that. But there's always a lot going on. There's always a lot of people to learn from. There's always a lot of jobs going on. If you want that all collated in one nice, tidy place, the newsletter is where you're going to find it.
It's tidy.
Exactly. It's very tidy. Acacia's doing a terrific job pulling all that together because there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
If you want that, head to sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter and you can find Acacia's magnificent work in your inbox every Friday.
We actually, before we get into the app, we actually said to Cash, we've got to get her on. We said that. So stay tuned for that because I think that's coming up in the next few weeks, I would have thought.
I think so.
For a guest appearance or maybe even a whole pod.
Maybe.
Hey, also just those events coming up, like speed networking, we got law masterclass, like we've got these meetups. If you're on the fence of being a member, jump in because there is so much coming up. There's so many opportunities all the way from coffee club to speed networking to masterclasses. Like you won't get this anywhere. So if you're on the fence, jump on board, head to our website. Super easy. We would love to have you in our community.
Or wait till May when we do it again.
Yeah. Or you can start your year in May.
Yeah.
If you want, if you want to.
Yeah.
Or you can take action now, which I would recommend doing.
Definitely.
In the meantime, though, grab a pen and enjoy this chat with Basha Sikorski. Basha, welcome to the SportsGrad podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Bash, ever since I last saw you, which was in Saint-Tropez in September last year, I've been telling everyone about this amazing sailing event that I went to and how we went out in the water and got right up close next to these amazing catamarans. And that was all thanks to you. And we randomly connected through LinkedIn. And so now it's such a pleasure to have you on the podcast to kind of share with all my family and friends who this person is who introduced me to the great world of sailing. So welcome.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. That's a big introduction. I hope I can live up to those expectations.
I'm sure you will.
Basha, we start our podcast in a unique way. I'm sure you're a massive fan of the show, so it'd be no surprise to you. But we start our episodes with some quick fire questions for our audience to get to know you a little bit better before we delve into your career. So I will start with the first question, and that is, what was your first ever job?
Oh, okay. So my first ever job was probably, well, I'd say officially the cafe. So I worked in a cafe when I was 14 and 9 months. And then I went through retail and a whole bunch of other things. So yeah, I was serving coffee.
Nice. And what did you study at university?
I studied commerce. I wasn't really sure what to study, I guess, when I was leaving school, and I was good at maths. I think commerce is a bit of a, well, it's quite a general degree, but it has that, international relations side of it, business relations, HR, and also, I guess it was a good life skills in general when I didn't know what I was exactly going to do.
Yeah, you're right. It's a good one you can take in any direction if you're still a bit unsure.
When in doubt, do a commerce degree.
Yeah, but I studied at ANU, and then I transferred because I took a break at uni, and then I went overseas, and then I transferred to Sydney and finished my degree in Sydney.
Nice. What's your favourite sporting moment?
So I guess I wasn't really, I have to say, I wasn't really into sport before I started working in sports. I was a mathlete, not an athlete. So basically I guess I didn't really appreciate sports until I started working for it. And I have to say my favorite moment was after working for the Rio Olympics. So I was there for, 3 years, and it was just, it was crazy. It was hectic. We were just working long, crazy hours, and, we started to build up and everything. And I think I saw my first event after 5 days after the Olympics had started. And I went to see Usain Bolt run 100 meters in the stadium in Rio. And it was insane, because you remember that's why you're here. It's not, all the logistics, all the other things, all the problems the journalists were having. I was like, wow, this is what we're doing. And it was a stadium of, 60,000 people chanting Usain Bolt's name. And it was crazy for me, because it just showed how sport, it unites people, and it really gave me goosebumps, because it was so many different nationalities chanting just for one person. And yeah, it was impressive.
That is amazing. And that's such a special 100-meter men's final to be at as well, because of who Usain was. But that, I have a list of things I want to do in my life, and the 100-meter final is on them. So I'm very jealous hearing that story.
I saw also Michael Phelps. I think my other one was Michael Phelps swimming in the Olympics as well. So that was a pretty big moment. I got lucky, and I went to these, I sort of made cameo appearances because it's in between work, but I went to these events, and I was like, oh wow, this is just insane. It's amazing.
And what's your favorite interview question to ask of candidates?
Gosh, I think, well, I like to get to know people, and I like to let people speak as well. I think things come out naturally. So, learning about people, learning about their experiences, you sort of weave in questions that are relevant. But I do like to sort of ask and probe a little bit about what makes people different, what makes them quirky, why they're interesting, because I think that's the diversity and, that side of people is what's interesting and what's an asset to a job. So that's usually kind of my favorite question to ask, or at least something to find out about.
What's a book or a podcast you'd recommend that's helped you at work?
Gosh, yeah. So I that's a long one, I guess. And I really, well, at the beginning of my career, when I finished my studies, I read this book called The Element, and it's by Ken Robinson. It's about how people learn in different ways. And I think it helped me a lot to realize how, our brains are structured differently. It's a lot about sort of that neurodivergence as well, and that success comes from different areas, and you can learn in different ways. So I was just talking about sort of how perhaps our school system is a little bit outdated, how people can learn with music, with activities, with, and the successes that came from the success stories that came from people that weren't necessarily, A grade students or top level students. So that was probably one of the interesting ones. I also liked, the podcasts. I love NPR. They have really cool ones, which is the hidden brain ones. And there's also How I Built This. And it talks about different entrepreneurs, talks about different people, talks about just how people got to where they were, but in really, I guess, from different ways of life and in different circumstances. So that was always interesting for me, because I didn't feel like I fit that sort of pattern of, doing really well at school, knowing what I wanted to do, becoming like a doctor, a lawyer, a public servant. And I was like, gosh, I'm so weird and I just don't know what I'm doing. I feel really lost. So I guess finding that really helped me with, I guess, anchoring my life a little bit, because then I was like, oh, okay, it's okay not to be, completely, let's say, standard and to be like everybody else. So that really helped me. And I think it's also interesting to hear about other people's stories and how people got there. And I love hearing about how people come up with ideas and how things sort of just happen on the fly. And, sometimes business ideas and, this whole thing about, what you guys are doing, the networking, it's not always planned. It's just, it comes out of one thing, comes out of another. And it's just about being open to different ideas and being able to try different things. And I guess also learning to fail and learning from that. So yeah. I recommend NPR and The Element. And also I think Losing My Virginity by Richard Branson was a good one.
I do admire him quite a bit. What does NPR stand for?
It's I think National Public Radio. It's an American radio station, and they just basically do so it's Hidden Brain and How I Built This and a few different ones that they have that they do, just a lot of cool different podcasts.
Yep.
I can send you guys links afterwards if you want to.
Yeah, please do.
Well, I think we're building one of the great lists of books and podcasts for doing this podcast, Basher. So we'll add it to the list. There's a serious list out there.
Absolutely. And Bash, what's one platform that you use at work that you couldn't live without?
So Google, I think. I use Google Docs online a lot, because it's, you can build PowerPoints, you can do Excel sheets, you can do everything. And basically in my line of work, you really work on a lot of shared documents. So having shared drives and being able to have working documents really works, and having everything online, because I've been known to drop computers or drop some things on my computer. So sometimes, you can't really just back up, on your hard drive, and I've been known to not back up. So having everything on the cloud really is helpful, because you can log in anywhere, and you have everything, and it's got all the different platforms of PowerPoints, Excel sheets, Word documents, PDFs. So I mean, it's pretty boring, I guess, as a tool, but yeah, that's probably one I couldn't live without.
Google Drive's really helped a few documents, haven't they, over the years?
That's it.
And finally, Bash, we get into it. If you had 30 minutes to pick anyone's brain, who would it be?
So for me, that one was a bit hard to answer, because there's not one single person. I really, I think I have FOMO in a lot of ways, in that sense that I love picking everybody's brains. And over the years, something that I've really learned is that you find out the most interesting things from people that you wouldn't expect to be interesting. So just talking to strangers and talking to random people that have maybe jobs that you don't think are very important, you find out things about them that are just incredible. Recently, and he found out that his band was opening for Metallica, for example, and he's the AV guy in SailGP. That people have just had amazing lives, and it really is, I think, it's not really answering your question, I'm sorry, but I think I guess talking to anyone and everyone and asking questions gives you such interesting insights where you don't really expect them, but yeah.
No, I love that answer.
Yeah, I love it as well.
Yeah, that's unique to anyone we've ever asked that question to before. So, and for those who haven't picked up on already, like, you are a very curious person, which this may come as no surprise to people, but you have worked in probably more countries than other people will ever visit in their entire life. Is there anywhere in particular where like this sort of inspiration to work and travel around the world, and you've taken with that ingrained curiosity everywhere you've been, did that inspiration to travel come from anywhere in particular?
I think, well, my parents, I grew up in Australia, obviously. My parents are both Polish, but I spoke Polish at home. I was learning French. I was always very curious to travel outside. I was just dying to go traveling. That was my kind of, my dream. Above anything else, I really wanted to discover, the world. And I always felt really anxious that I wasn't going to see everything in my time. So,
sorry, from what age did you start to have that compelling feeling?
Gosh, it's hard to kind of, I guess, I'm really young, I think, because, I always knew that, okay, well, I had family in Europe, so I wanted to do that, to visit my family in Europe. At some point, we always sort of had a lot of different cultures and different influences in the house. So it was always something that was just always present. And I knew, I guess, as soon as I turned 18, I wanted to go traveling. So it was something that I was looking towards. I didn't know what I was going to do or how I was going to do it, but I just knew I needed to get out and see the world first, and then see how things, see what was going to happen after that.
Nice. And so on that journey around the world, where did that take you?
Gosh. Okay. So the first time I went overseas, I just did I did a backpacking, sort of like 4 weeks backpacking around Europe. I was just dying to go overseas, and I did that when I was 21. And then I came back to Australia, and I was like, no, I need to go. I need to really visit. And sort of, it's one thing to travel, but it's a different thing to really live somewhere, because it's just a different kind of experience. And I got a taste of that, I guess, when I was traveling and I was backpacking. And when you're backpacking as a tourist versus when you stay even a few days with somebody that lives there, it's just a completely different experience. So yeah, I came back and I started I was continuing my studies, and then I was looking into sort of different opportunities. My friends had all done sort of gap years in the UK, and I was really adamant that I didn't really just want to do a gap year. I wanted to go somewhere where I could learn a language and really challenge myself, so that it wasn't, well, not wasted time, I guess, but it's just an extra challenge to throw yourself in the deep end. And I was learning French at the time, so I was looking. I think it was my French teacher that gave me this site, and the Ministry of Education in France does this sort of language assistant exchange. And you do 10 months overseas in France in a French school, and you teach English basically. So I applied for that. And I did 10 months in France, and it was kind of a bit of a funny experience, because you can choose 10 different cities when you apply. And I just come back from my, sort of backpacking tour, and I'd done all the south of France, and I was like, oh, it's so glamorous. So I chose all these, glamorous cities like Cannes and, Marseille, Toulouse, everything in the south of France. And then I was like, oh, maybe Paris at the end. And when I got my, acceptance letter, they sent me this town, which I was like, I'd never heard of it. And I looked on the map, and I'm like, well, there's one in the north of France, but I'm like, I don't really find the town that's that name in the south, because it's not possible that you guys put me in the north if I've just everything in the south. And so they were like, no, that's where you're going. You're going to this place called Cambrai, which is population 40,000 people. And it was this obscure town that was in the north. And I was like, expecting to be sort of on the French Riviera getting a tan. And I got placed in cold and grey part of France, which was, to be honest, amazing. It was an amazing experience. I was there for 10 months. There was 10 language assistants and this tiny town. And I was teaching, some of my students were actually older than me, because I was teaching history and commerce and things like that in English. So I was kind of also learning a little bit with them too. But and then, I made really good connections there. And I'm still friends with the 10 people that I was there with, which was 19 years ago now. So we send each other WhatsApp group messages, on a weekly basis. So it was really amazing. And that, made me really want to go back to Europe. I came back to Australia, and I had to finish my degree. And then I got an offer to work in Sydney. So then I moved to Sydney and I finished my degree, but I was just really trying to at all costs sort of go back to Europe.
Wow. What a story.
That's very cool.
That's so good.
I love how you guys are still in touch as well, because it's incredible how like experiences like that bond a group of people for such a long time. Like even though like we're, years out of Cricket Australia now, like we're still like in our WhatsApp group with our friends from back then, like all the time. But that's very cool. Like we'll find out if we stand the test of time for 19 years. That's still.
Yeah. Reminds me, I did this Croatia sail once. And like, I'm still mates with them on Facebook, and I kind of like still see what they're doing today. I'm like, I haven't spoken to you in a while, but I'm sure if I dropped you a message, you'd be happy to reply. But anyway, probably a lower scale to what you're dealing with there, Basha.
Well, drop a message and see what they're up to. Sometimes, they're just reaching out to people. It's nice because then they might be in your area, or they, it's really, it's always worth it.
Yeah. We mentioned before we jumped on, your resume is just out of this world, and the length of it we could talk for hours on. But can you walk us through some of the events that you've worked on, because it is quite a list?
Okay, so just going through the sporting events, I started really kind of, by accident, let's say, in the Olympics in Rio. That was the first time I worked in sports, and that was in 2014, I believe, 2013, 2014. I started working for the local organising committee, so I did the Olympics and the Paralympics in Rio, and then from that, sort of just grew exponentially, and I was asked to go to Tokyo to sort of just for consulting, to sort of share the best practices of Rio. Then we moved to Berlin. In Berlin, I was working for the first European Championships, which was in Berlin and in Glasgow. So I was working there for a good couple of years. I think it was 2 years organising that. And then I also went and did the World Athletics and Asian Athletics in Qatar. I worked on handball in the west of France. I did Youth Olympics in Argentina, and I did Winter Olympics in Korea, in Pyeongchang. I did also some Winter Olympics in Lausanne, and then sailing, which I've been doing for the past 5 years. But at the same time, I've also been still engaged with the International Paralympic Committee, which is really like one of my passion projects. And that I also, did the World Para Athletics in Dubai and the World Para Athletics in Paris, and they're going to be in Kobe, Japan this year. So I think that's all of it, or most of it. Yeah.
My goodness.
That's just event after event. Just continue going. Your frequent flyers would be out of this world.
You'd think so, yeah. But I mean, it's a hard one to keep up because I've changed countries. So I was going well on BA for some time. And then when I've moved to France, now I'm on Air France. So then you just kind of,
You got to shift them around.
Got about 10 frequent flyer accounts flying around.
Yeah. And it's, if I combine them all together, it's a shame you can't combine them, because I reckon I'd be like a platinum somewhere. But, I'm just kind of randomly collecting points in different places at the moment.
You mentioned in the quickfire questions, and I remember you saying this to me in person, that you don't really care about sport. So what is it that keeps you doing all these different events?
I mean, it's not that I don't care about sport. I think it's I wasn't really interested in sport, to be honest, before. And again, it's quite a surprise to all my friends that I am working in sports, because I was probably the least sporty person out of my friendship group. What keeps me going, I think it's what interests me is really working with international people, working in international environments. It's the challenge, it's the pace, it's just, it really is, I guess, a fast-paced environment. And I really love working with journalists. So I work with journalists and photographers, working with people that are really talented and dedicated to their jobs. It's really nice to be around that, when I find that the same with artists, with musicians and things like that. And personally, I'm not really talented at, let's say, anything in particular. I think my talent lies kind of more in bringing people together, or sort of recognizing people that are talented that need to be connected. And I really enjoy being around people that have got that passion and are just, they love their jobs. It's so nice to be in that environment. And I was, I've worked in different areas, as we've mentioned before. I worked in public service, I worked in corporate world. I lived in different places and worked in different industries, but that difference for me is people that are passionate, and that's what's really cool about it. When you're in the public service, sometimes it can be a bit, let's say, demotivating, because that 9 to 5, the people are just there. And I'm not saying that for everybody, and I'm not, putting anything down in that sense, but in experience, people sometimes are just there to do a job, and it's a means to an end. And I don't believe that work should be a means to an end. I think you work so much in your life that it should be, it is that find something you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. That's, it's a really big cliche, but again, my parents are both, artists, and they were both kind of really pushing for me to do something that I love, because it's so important to enjoy your work, no matter what that, I guess, the remuneration is at the day. If you're not liking it, it's just, it's too much of a price to pay for that.
No wonder it was quite jarring for you coming out of school when you're clearly quite smart, and school's trying to push you down a certain path, and your parents are very creative and they're telling you follow your passions. It's no wonder why kids come out of school thinking like, what the hell do I do with my life? Because there's a lot of forces at play. You mentioned that you're in it for the people and you love the different people that you get to be around. I was wondering if you could speak to the environment of the SailGP staff, because I saw it firsthand in Saint-Tropez, and you've got these collections of teams and people literally coming from every corner on the planet to put on a sailing regatta. And then it goes to the next place and the next place and the next place. And it's kind of like this, traveling circus in a way, but everybody seems to be so tight. I was wondering, what's your experience with the people like it at SailGP?
Yeah, it really is like a traveling circus, or like a gypsy caravan, we call it, and it's absolutely crazy at sometimes, but you really become, it becomes a family, because you spend so much time together and you rely on each other so much, because, an event doesn't really happen unless everybody's invested in it, and, one department can be successful if another one's not. It doesn't really matter. So it really does, build like this sort of, I guess, this vibe of that family, that we're all relying on each other. We're all here to help each other. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time to build that up, because, you come in, when I'm coming into events that are sort of short events, you sort of come in and you get thrown together and then you leave. But the really cool thing about SailGP is that we are constantly sort of doing the same thing. But, having said that, it's completely different each time. Even if we go like somewhere like Saint-Tropez, we've been to like 3 times, or Sydney, where we're coming back, I think, for the 4th or the 5th time. Every time is different. Every time there's a new challenge, and every time we've already changed as a company, we've grown. But having those people that, they've got your back, and that you've got theirs no matter what, it's really cool. And you come to understand, I guess, everybody's different areas and what the importance of every single area in an environment where it's, it's a huge sporting event. It's not just the athletes. It's not just, the F-50s or the boats there. It's literally every single person's role is crucial, and it's yeah, you have to appreciate that,
It does come across as a place that people really enjoy being there and people want to be there. I was wondering, like, what's going on at a higher level, and like, what are some of the foundations and purposes behind what the SailGP is?
So, I mean, for me, it's quite interesting, and this is also probably one of the reasons that I do love working at SailGP, and why I think it's important to have a multifaceted kind of, I guess, passion about it. So, for SailGP, what really, I guess, keeps me there, and what attracted me there is that we were a startup, and it was just really, I didn't know anything about sailing. I'm still learning, to be honest, and I still say some stupid things every now and then. But it's, it was this dynamic startup that just came about. I was there from the very, very beginning, and it grew exponentially, but it also grew with meaning. Not only do we have the sports, and the sports side is like an huge entertainment property now. It's become something that's famous, and it's become like a really. It's interesting, because I used to, and I've seen this now, because I used to. When people asked me where I worked, I was like, oh, I work for SailGP, and I had this feel of like what it is. And now I'm like, oh, it's SailGP, and they're like, oh yeah, I know SailGP. I'm like, oh, what? Oh, wait, oh, okay, because you're used to sort of explaining it to people. But for me, that important aspect of it is really that, we work a lot on the diversity, equity, the inclusion side of it. And that's something that's really important, especially in, the current environment, but really putting in like half of that, what we do is the Impact League and the Sports League. So really, really having that emphasis on things that are important and that are, you feel like you're making a positive impact. You're not just putting together an event, but you're, maybe, there's the whole Inspire program for us. So we have a program that engages young students, young children, young sailing clubs, underprivileged schools, and all that sort of, different youth in different aspects of SailGP. So not just sailing, but technology. We have young photographers, we have, young people in communications. So it's about inspiring that. So that goal, I guess, at the top is to become a big, famous and, obviously profitable sports entertainment entity, but it's also at the same time to make a positive impact. And that's quite important, and to make it meaningful and not just say what we're doing something, but it's actually putting your money where your mouth is. And that's, really important for me to have that.
Yeah, awesome. I think watching it recently, I was watching the meet in Dubai. Was that in December? I think it was. I love the broadcast. It was just me, but like the graphics on the broadcast, just the way they spoke about it, the energy, it was unreal. And I actually watched it with my mum over December. It was quite fun. But it was absolutely outstanding. But what I loved was the gender equity. Like there's so many females and males all in the same boat, and it's not just a male-dominated sport. Like, you'd look at F1 and it's very just quite male-dominated, whereas SailGP looks like it's really the same. And I think that's really cool to see. Is that sort of part of, like, I guess, one of the main strategies that you've got behind it is to really push the gender side of things as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a couple of years ago, they created a Women's Pathway program to really engage a lot of the female athletes and bring up that talent, which has been really crucial and really a really great program, to be honest. And, while sailing is still a male-dominated sport, and even just in the sports industry is quite male-dominated, but we have, not just in sailing, but we've also sort of partnered with a group called Apex now, and they're doing a Women's Accelerator program, which is internally for women in the business. So it's also, it's a mix of athletes and a mix of sort of young professional women to give them sort of mentors and skills and sort of how to advance and how to build their careers. So that's really interesting part of it, because it's not just on the water. And I think it's also admitting that we still have a long way to go. It's sort of going, okay, we've got a lot of successes, and building on those successes, as opposed to just resting on your laurels and being like, oh, okay, we've done the token sort of thing, now we're good. So that's a really important part for me. And personally, I'm part of the Inclusion Action Group as well. And I'm sort of heading the group of women of SailGP. So we have about, I think, close to 100 women in that group now. And it's, athletes, it's team managers, it's, we have not just women in that group, it's obviously also men that are allies and want to support. So that's been a really interesting one. And we've been doing different engagements on site and online. And one of them really recently was with one of our sponsors, with our key partner Badla in Abu Dhabi, where we met their women's group and had like a bit of a speed networking session, which was, just really great to meet other women in, the finance industry and talk about different aspects of careers and just get to know each other. So, yeah.
When you're coming up with these sort of strategies and action plans to help equality, because you're such a new sport and everything's kind of a blank canvas, with this particular strategy, did you look at anybody else and think they're doing it really well, we should kind of emulate what they're doing? Or did you see it more as a chance to be like, we're starting from scratch, we can really create this program to be whatever we want to be?
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. You need to look at success stories, but also I think being, coming from different different sports that are much more established, there is just an ease of being able to implement things and try them, and sort of you have less pushback because it's, sometimes it's a very big hierarchy, it's a very big history, and people that change, it's a bit slower to implement. So being new is definitely a huge advantage, and it's being dynamic, and I guess also making sure that we have a really great staff, and I think it's something that's a key aspect to this, that you have people that come from different walks of life. So it's not just people that have come from sailing or people that have come from, a certain side of it. It's people that have come from different, really different walks in life, and that bring their own spin to it. And it's being able to sort of take ideas and go, hey, let's run with this. Let's see what happens, and let's sort of that, not trial and error, but not being afraid to try different things and really implement maybe sometimes things that are more like, I don't know what to say, but like, maybe more risky or just a bit more impactful, and then seeing how they go, as opposed to being sort of slow and cautious.
Yeah, I do love that about SailGP, how everything seems like, if you've got an idea, if you want to take a risk, there's a license to do so, which I think is a breath of fresh air in the world of sport. I want to switch lanes slightly to your job in particular and what you do on the ground with SailGP. And I've watched you in action. It's enough to make anybody melt and think, how on earth does she do it all? And I wanted to know if there are any people in particular who you've learnt from along the way. And if so, are there any particular lessons that they taught you on your journey that have really stuck with you for your career?
Gosh, I think you take learnings from everybody, really, that not the people that aren't great, but I've been pretty lucky to work with a lot of great people, and I think it's a lot of it also is working with different people and having that experience culturally, and also being open to different cultures. Also, I guess working with people of different abilities and different neurodivergent people and that sort of thing, just learning about different ways of thinking, and I guess that creative process. So one of the things, I guess, is also being transparent. When I was working at Legal Aid, and I had a great boss who was always very, very open, very blunt, and very just matter of fact. And I think that's really important. I remember also when I was working in Rio, we were working with media, and there was a lot of issues, and my boss there was always very much, very transparent about all the issues that came about to media, for example, that, here are things that are going to happen, or here are the issues that we're encountering, because it's when you are transparent, people are, have time to, I guess, adjust to things, and also you make people feel comfortable and sincere. So that transparency has been really important for me, I guess, in work, and dealing with clients, dealing with people, when you can just give them honest answers and honest expectations. And I guess just multitasking, I think that just comes with a need for it, because you end up just with 16 things to do, and it's, I guess, multitasking has always been my strength. My weakness is really just being able to focus on one task. And if you give me one thing to do in a week to do it, I'll do it last minute. If you give me 16,000 things, I'll do 17,000 of them, and I can do that in one day. But it's a skill, and also sometimes a negative. So you have to sort of learn to hone into your, let's say, your good points, and then sort of learn how to manage the bad ones. So I think I guess it's a matter of, I don't know, it's a very long-winded answer again. Sorry, it's not very clear, but it's sort of hard to pinpoint one thing, but I think you just pick up things along the way each time. And it's really just about managing people, making sure that it's also, I think, wanting to succeed and wanting to make sure that everybody's okay. So that kind of comes with that multitasking and making sure that we're all sort of juggling things, and that other people are too. So it's not like, you're not like, oh God, I'm doing everything and nobody's doing anything. You're like, oh God, let's do 16,000 things, because everybody's doing 16,000 things, and I need to make sure that I'm not dropping the ball and, leaving people with more work than they can handle.
It is funny how the more tasks someone gets given, the better they get at time management, because you're almost forced into it. I know I was like that during uni where like, I think when I was doing my first degree, before I dropped out, if I just had like one subject to focus on, I'd be like, oh, I'll do this last. But then when I started my sport management degree and actually started caring about it and doing everything around it I needed to do, suddenly my week was full. Yeah. And but I was getting through it all rather than leaving it to the last minute. I think there's a technical term for it called Parkinson's law, I think, where like you'll get whatever you need to do done in the shortest amount of time possible, closest to when it's due. So it's just part of human nature, I guess.
I mean, I feel like there are some people, and I guess it depends what your strengths are, but there are some people that are really good at, planning things out and doing things in a very, sort of, I guess, stretched out way and doing little bits and pieces and things like that. But I found, I guess, also people that work in events are probably not that. You sort of tend to gravitate towards people that are similar to you. Mm. So I find, a lot of the people I work with are also neurodivergent. In a lot of photographers are very much on the spectrum because they have certain talents and skills, and it's just amazing to watch people. But it is a bit of a unique environment when you're working in sports, I think, because or events anyway, because there's no room to be sort of wondering which thing I'm going to do first or how am I going to do it. So you end up, I guess, people with that sort of mentality end up in these sort of industries as well.
I want to blend in a little bit of your Olympics experience in with SailGP and sort of keen to understand how the day in the life compares. So obviously you've got a massive Olympic Games compared to SailGP. What does that look like?
I guess like SailGP is just doing Olympics every month. It's that difference was really that when I was working for the Olympics, it was my first Olympics. We had like 2 years to deliver something, and for me that was, it was actually quite cool because I came from, I think I was at Microsoft and also then before that I was just working in private industry, and it's quite. You don't have these set goals. You have monthly achievements, you have monthly KPIs. It's different sort of, it's an ongoing thing, but having this 2-year goal was like really great for me. And I was like, this is awesome. And again, you're working day in, day out with, to plan something, and it's constantly changing. We had, Rio was quite challenging, and we had a lot of, changes, a lot of budget issues, and it was just at some point I was like, oh my god, this isn't going to happen. This is just not going to happen because it's impossible. How can things be like this? Because it was my first time with it. And then you get to Olympics, so your day to day is kind of like you have a quieter days, but then in the lead up it gets crazy. So we had like 5 or 6 months where I maybe had 1 or 2 days off, but it wasn't. I didn't really notice it because you're just like, you've got your head in it and you're like, right. Media, for example, came 2 months out to Rio, and they started setting up in the, main press center and the international broadcast center, and you're working full time to sort of deliver it. And then it starts and you're like, oh, it's started. It's fine. And you have, a certain amount of time to get things right. So, the Olympics is over like a 2-week period almost. So you get into it, and by day 5, you're like, oh, okay, things are good now. Everything's running smoothly, and you get into it. With SailGP, the difficulty, I guess, is that we get in there and we get out. So we have 3 days. We don't have 2 weeks. Essentially, we have 2 days of competition, but with media, we have that extra day where you have a practice day. So we start with a press conference on that Friday. So we have a 3-day event, but we don't have that sort of grace period where we get into that groove and we go, okay, now everything's going well, because it's just, you don't have time. So you have to get in there and do it. But on the other sort of, conversely, you're also doing it every month almost. So you do get into a pattern where you're like, okay, you get in, you get out. It's kind of like a, step and repeat. Although having said that, it's vastly different at the same time each time, but you do have the basics down. So you kind of go in and it's more of a smooth and well-oiled machine. Whereas, Olympics, it's kind of a very long build-up to a short event, because you feel like if you've been working for a few years to it, and then it's just like a 2-week event, and then then we had Paralympics, but then you're just like, what happened? Like I just I spent all this time and now it's all gone, and like, wow. So it's just yeah, it's very different, but interesting in both ways.
Yeah. You've been with SailGP for, I think, 5.5 years now, which I was scrolling through your LinkedIn. It looks like it's the longest that you've stayed in any job in your journey hopping around the world. What is it that's kept you going at this job?
So I think this and working at Legal Aid actually was probably my other longest tenure, because I was there during my whilst I was studying. What's kept me here, I guess, is that, so, Olympics and whatnot, I guess if you see a lot of people that do Olympics and sports, there is a lot of hopping around, because you work, normally if you look at somebody's CV and you see that, it's not a very good sign, right? If you're at different places for, 6 months, 5 months, 3 months, it kind of looks a bit dodgy, but because it's the nature of sports events, you have different kind of, roles. So you have a games time role, which will be a month, and then you have a role which is more of a, organizational role where you're building up the whole thing. So then you've got longer, but you're not usually there for longer than a couple of years. For me, SailGP has been, it's been kind of it's a long-term project. It's a league that's growing and it's building, and the challenges are constant. So I don't feel like I've had a moment to sort of plateau and be like, oh, I've got this now. And I've sort of, I guess, you can do that, and you can sort of just do your job and do the basics, and you can get by. But for me, that I think the most important thing is that you can challenge yourself, and you can grow your area, you can grow different things and learn new things. So I find that we constantly have that in SailGP. We are constantly doing different things. We are going to new places, adding teams. We have different, I guess we have bigger goals, and the whole inclusion side of it too. So it's growing and it's constantly challenging. So that's something that I think has kept me there for this long time. And also a lot of the part of it is also the people, a large part of a great work environment is having people that you like working with, that you trust, that you can rely on, because you really need to.
Having a challenge, a constant challenge or something to work towards is such an important thing, because we talk to a lot of young people in their roles and see them get into these amazing roles, and then even, as soon as 12 months later, they're like, I'm ready to leave because this organisation is kind of keeping me at the same level, and there's not really anywhere else to step into. And so you see a lot of people burn out and go elsewhere. You lose them because there's nowhere to go.
And it's probably also because they're doing the same thing every year. It sounds like, because SailGP is like a startup, it's constantly innovating, it's constantly changing. I can think of some other sports that probably just replicate the same thing each and every year. So it's understandable, if people who are just going to do the same thing again, they probably don't feel like they need to be there any longer.
I mean, I think also, to me, it's, you can make any job interesting for yourself. And I think that's something that I've learned, in my recent years, let's say, or my long years of different careers. But you can carve out your own job. So, I could potentially be doing exactly the same thing that I've been doing for 5 years, but because I want to learn, I've been coming up with different ideas. I've been saying, maybe we could do this. Highlight that, because I've had other jobs that are, I've worked in public service jobs where then I started doing, I started taking up different responsibilities because I was bored, and I was like, well, how can I learn? So maybe I can be part of this group, or maybe let me take care of this side of it. And I think that's something maybe important to sort of get across to young people, that, if your job does get boring, have a look first. If you can make it better, talk to people in the organization, see if you can learn from them in different areas. That's really the big part for me, I think, was that I spent a lot of time talking to people and asking them what they do in different areas. And that was something I started with in Microsoft when I joined as an intern. I made a point to make an appointment, like a half an hour appointment or like a lunch appointment with everybody in my office. And I was like, well, what's your job? How did you get here? What are you doing? And, that's also what, with SailGP, what I'm trying to do with our Women of SailGP network, and sort of those sort of parts of trying to get people to talk more about what they're doing, and they learn from each other. So yeah, I agree with that, but I also think that you can make any job meaningful.
Yeah, it definitely takes a certain type of person. And funny hearing that you went around to everyone and said, hey, who are you and what's your job? Because when I got to this Cricket Australia, that's exactly what I did as well. And I was like, am I stepping out of place here by meeting all these people? Because half the people in my team, just do your job.
Why are you doing this?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. You could have started this podcast. It's exactly what this is about.
Yeah.
Then, I was a bit like unsure, but then at the same time, when you do that, people are actually happy to be, to actually be asked questions, and they're not, I was always like, oh, I'm so sorry. I don't, people are so busy, and I'm like, oh, I don't really, want to annoy you, but I really am interested in what you do. And you find that even the busiest people will make a moment to speak to you, because it's nice to be asked, and it's nice for somebody to take interest in that, and that's, you never know until you ask. And like I always say, you've always got the no.
Yep.
Start with a no, and then you go up.
I think particularly while you're early in your career as well, you can really take advantage of that.
Yeah, I still do it now. I still, when there's new people join, I still just I try to catch up with them and just try to know, because everybody, like I said, everybody has different and interesting stories, and I guess this comes from even, when I was, it's a bit of a tangent, but when I was in Belgium, I had homeless people that lived outside, like were sort of near my place, and I used to stop and talk to them all the time. We'd bring them food and whatnot, but they spoke 3 languages and had the most amazing backgrounds, and I was like, wow, and you guys are homeless. This is crazy. And just everybody has different skills. Everybody that you speak to has some sort of interesting experience. So you can't discount that. And I think that's what makes it interesting.
Finally, Basha, what advice would you give to someone in a media coordinator role looking to advance their career to the level that you're at right now?
Gosh, I think basically try everything you can, work in different areas, ask questions, don't be afraid of failure. And again, I think it's also worthwhile to, look into other areas and volunteer in other areas. For example, if you're working in media operations, go and as in broadcast, go do an event in technical and be a technical delegate. Let's say volunteer and things like that, because all the aspects for me really help you understand your job. I really believe in having that sort of holistic approach, because you really understand your job better, you understand other people's jobs better, and you learn so much. There's no area that you can't learn in. So I would say just get as much exposure to different sports, different areas. Even if it's not sports, you can get those skills elsewhere. If your dream is to work in sports, if you're not working in sports, you can still get experience, you can still get exposure, and you can still, always meet people. So I guess just get as much experience anywhere, and I wouldn't be worried about the levels. That's one thing that I'd say is where people sort of worry about hierarchies and where they are and if they're not advanced fast enough. I think that it comes, those things sort of come with when you're passionate and when you're doing something you love, it'll come naturally to you. You need to focus on the things you're good at and the things you enjoy and learning and getting, I guess, when you focus on the sincere side of it, like, wow, I really want to get experience. I really want to know more. I really want to have that curiosity. The other things will come naturally. But if you're just focused on sort of getting to a certain point in your life, I don't think that maybe events or this is potentially for you. It's a different sort of world. And I personally, and this is just my own views and my own experience, but I think it's just about that sincerity, curiosity, and looking to leave a legacy as opposed to get somewhere and get a salary.
I love that. Leave a legacy. We've never really chatted about that before. No. That's awesome. Before we wrap up,
that's
Ruth,
something that I always say to people. You have to leave a legacy.
I like that. Don't just do a job, grab a salary and go. Not leave something behind. Fantastic. Ruse, before we wrap up, any other episodes relating to Basha that we can have a look at?
Yeah, well, we've heard all about how magnificent the SailGP team are. If you want to hear a little snippet of about 20 different people who do 20 different jobs, you can listen to the episode from me on the ground in Saint-Tropez last year, which I think was around the episode 255 mark-ish. And then if you want to hear from the Chief Content Officer, Melissa Lawton, She is in episode 237. She was the second one of last year. So check her out as well.
Brilliant. Great memory of the episodes. Our Man on the Ground, that is a great episode. I'm sure Bashi would have enjoyed Rubes walking around the SailGP event, which was amazing. So fantastic. Well, Basha, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have absolutely loved hearing about your journey, and as I said at the start, that resume is doing things. It's amazing, and just hearing some of your experiences at these incredible events is just amazing. And honestly, looking at SailGP after sort of Ruse went last year and having taken a bit more of an interest in it, it's just an incredible event, and looking forward to getting over to Sydney and checking it out. So thanks again for joining us.
Well, look, thank you guys so much for having me. And I think, Ruben, you're coming to Sydney. Are you coming as well, right?
That's the plan, yeah.
Sydney event? Oh, great. I'll look forward to meeting you in person, and I'll look forward to seeing you again, Ruben. And I really hope that your trip to Sydney is, let's say, less eventful than your trip to Saint-Tropez. So it was still a great story. So
yeah. That's it. I hope so too. Go back and listen to that episode if anyone wants to find out what we're talking about.
Thanks, Basha.
I love that story. I think it's funny. Thank you, guys, and look forward to Sydney.
Thanks, Basha.
Guys, it is time now for the People's segment of the podcast, Ask SportsGrad, where every week we answer a question directly from our community. As we said at the top of the episode, if you would like to become a SportsGrad member and ask us a question, head to our website and join our waitlist. The community is back open for business next week, so get around it and get involved. Rubes, this question comes from Dhruv, and he says, I was applying for an internship where they asked to upload an online portfolio, but it wasn't mandatory. Is it necessary to have an online portfolio which shows your work experience and the projects you've worked on in the industry? If yes, should it be a PowerPoint or something else?
Great question. And I like that this internship has kind of opened your eyes to an option that you can take to make yourself stand out when applying for a job. But it's not mandatory. However, I'm going to make it mandatory for you right now, Drew.
If it says it's not mandatory, do it.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do it. And you ask, is it necessary? No, it's not necessary. But if you want to stand out, then doing things that other people are not prepared to do is necessary. And so I can imagine that probably 95% of people will probably see the optional button and think, I'm not going to do this. I'll just send you my resume. Here's my cover letter that I've sent to 20 other organizations and I haven't updated any of it.
Get the template out.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas you, Drew, and all the other SportsGrad members, you are going to make an online portfolio because you are going to stand out. You're going to show that you go above and beyond for the applications, which is then going to represent the kind of work that you are going to do when you get inside the organization. So you are going to put your best foot forward by doing absolutely everything that they have asked for and might want and haven't asked for as well. So yes, I would definitely do this. Now, how should you do this? Well, there's a couple of different ways. You can use simple no-code online tools to build out your portfolio. What I mean by that is you can use things like Canva to create a online PowerPoint. You could also use a Google Slides as well to showcase your work, and then you simply share the link and let anyone who's got the link view your work. Or you can use platforms like Notion as well, which allow you to create basically a blank web page and then publish that web page and share the link as though you're sharing a standard URL. So the Notion, Canva, and Google Slides are probably the three online tools I would recommend to build it. Anything more fancy than that, you enter the space of like building your own website with, Wix or Squarespace or WordPress, whatever, Webflow. And that's probably a bit too much work for what you're trying to achieve here. If you're applying for a design or developer role, then absolutely, build the website to prove that you can build websites. But if you're just trying to show a portfolio of work, some of these other platforms are much more simple to use and definitely do the job. So yes, Drew, definitely go and create your portfolio and find a simple tool to do it on.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. If it says not mandatory, the lesson here, it's mandatory.
Do it. It's mandatory for you if you want to excel.
Yeah, if you want to stand out, just do it. Brilliant. Well, if you'd like to ask a question like Drew, become a SportsGrad member. Each week we jump on virtual events like Q&As, speed networking, and job fairs, where it's an open floor for you to ask us and industry professionals any of your questions. And all of these sessions are recorded, so when you join, you get an immediate access to over nearly 60 hours of content now, by the way, and that is exclusive to you as a SportsGrad member. In the meantime, find us on LinkedIn and give us some love with a rating. And if you enjoy the show, flick it on to a mate if you think they'd enjoy it as well, and subscribe on Apple and follow on Spotify. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Hey friends, one last thing before you go. If you really want to make an impact in sport, then subscribe to the SportsGrad newsletter. Inside, we share all the latest job openings and networking events, so you're always aware of opportunities to land a job and grow your network. Plus, we share a Q&A with a professional on how they grow their career in sport. Here we talk about things like how they moved overseas or negotiated their salary or landed a new job or promotion, made a career change, and so much more. It's kind of like a little boost of inspiration in your inbox before the weekend. So if you're like us, you're career driven and you're keen to progress quickly, you're going to love the SportsGrad newsletter. To get it, head to sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter to subscribe or follow the link in the show notes. See you next time.